All right, and you got to reel it back, and there's a realization part of it. You could see that with Pat Mahomes after throwing a bunch of interceptions. It was not going as smoothly for him as it had been the last couple of years, and so you have to step back. You have to reassess, and it just shows me what even a greater player he is to be able to make that adjustments when you have failure.
All right, week 15 is in the books. It's Christmas week. Hard to believe that we're there already. Week 16 is up ahead, and to help us break everything down here on this week's Hurry Up, on your right, we have ex-Broncos, Panthers, and Bears head coach John Fox. On your left is former first-round pick, ex-Dallas Cowboy, and ex-Ohio State Buckeye, Bobby Carpenter. I want to look at the AFC, and I think it was 8 weeks ago, that everybody was burying the Chiefs. What's wrong with Kansas City? They're 3-4. The defense is a mess. Patrick Mahomes doesn't look like himself. Well, lo and behold, here we are, 3 weeks left in the season. Kansas City is alone atop the AFC with a 10-4 mark. They've won 7 in a row. And guys, what's really interesting to me, and Bobby, I'll start with you on this. Their defense has carried them most of the way. For the first 6 of those 7 games, they held every opponent under 20 points. Steve Spagnuolo's done a great job, and they got guys like Chris Jones and Frank Clark and Tyrann Mathieu at the top of their game. And then on Thursday night, things came back around a little bit, and now all of a sudden it looks like the offense is starting to hit its stride, where you saw at the end of regulation, they go 75 yards, score a touchdown, force overtime, and then go 75 yards again in overtime to win the game. So, I mean, Bobby, is what we're seeing now real? I think is the where I want to kind of jump off here. There was so much questioning of where Kansas City was over the first 3 months of the season. Now here we are, they're on top of the AFC again. Do you think the Chiefs are right back where they were the last 2 years, where they were representing the AFC in the Super Bowl?
I think they're getting really close. And one of the things, like their offense hit a little bit of a funk, and they were so good at some things. They could just score. And whenever you can score in chunks like that, and you feel like, hey, you always have the ability to just go 80 yards on one play. Like that makes it really easy, but you fall into a false sense of security. And I don't know if they were truly executing at a really, really high level, at certain points, just on a consistent basis. And now you're starting to see them get back into that and be able to put together 75-yard drives that aren't 3 plays, that are more like 8 or 9 plays. And during this whole time, especially, one of the things that helped them and was getting Chris Jones back healthy in that lineup. I'll say this. The whole team plays better when he's out there, not just the defense. Like their whole team plays better. And I don't know if I want to sit here and say he's the best defensive player in the NFL, but I don't know if anyone is more valuable to what they're trying to do. And you saw when he's out how that impacts them, because their defensive pressure up front makes everyone else look better. That gives their offense more confidence. They're getting the ball in more advantageous situations. And I think the offense is coming along, but Spags has been able to kind of piece this thing together. They've been getting those stops. And when you have a guy who's as talented as Pat Mahomes, it's going to eventually come back around. But they're going to get a book out on you. They're going to figure out, hey, they like to do this. This is where when they align Tyreek Hill, this is what they're going to try to do. This is how they attack with Kelsey. We'll force other guys to try and beat us. And then Andy Reid's like, hey, we got to tweak some things up, but we also have to get back to basics and being able to run the ball and put those drives together. And I think you're beginning to see that again.
Well, Fox, it's a long season, and I obviously Spags and Andy and Eric Bieniemy have a lot of experience doing this. So it seems to me like almost the challenge changed on them a little bit this year. Like where early in the year, Frank and Chris and Tyrann on defense were a little beat up, in and out of the lineup, and maybe their best players not playing their best affected the whole unit and affected the whole operation on defense. And then offensively, from what I've heard from talking to some people there, teams were really sort of playing too high on them a lot and saying, all right, like we're not going to let you beat us in 3 plays anymore. Like Bobby said, we're going to make you go 8 plays. We're going to make you go 10 plays. We're going to make you go 12 plays. So do you see the Chiefs adjusting now maybe a little bit? Is that part of this where, they've got really good coaches over there, and part of it was just they'd played a certain way the last 2 years and it served them really well, and maybe now the league was making them adjust a little bit, and they've done so?
Well, I did a segment, a while back when they were 3-5 at the bottom of the AFC West, and truth be told, everybody says, "Oh, they done? Is this been their 2-year run?" And I was like, no, because all of this is fixable. I mean, let's be real. Defensively, if you look at them statistically over the last, I'll count this year and say 3 years, 2 years they were in the Super Bowl prior, it wasn't about their defense. Now, don't get me wrong, Spags is a great coach, and he gets every single thing out of those guys he can. I think they're improved this year 3, all right, of working on a third Super Bowl run. But where they were getting in trouble was on offense. And they're doing all the things that you can't do to win games. I don't care who you are, what your talent level is, that you can't do, and that is be undisciplined. All right, penalties, turnovers, all right, lack of execution. They were busting protections. They were getting a lot of penalties. The great thing about that as a coach is those are fixable. Those are things that you can talk about, you can grind at, you can work at in practice. And you knew Andy Reid, Spags you talked about, Eric Bieniemy, they're going to get that right. And those players have a lot of pride after being in 2 straight Super Bowls, and they're going to correct it. So it's not a surprise to me that they're back on top, #1 seed in the AFC. I think they'll hold on to that and be the team to beat going forward. You got to have some fortune in there. They got to stay healthy. We got a lot of COVID running around, and it's kind of decimated some of the teams in this league, over the last week. But they're definitely capable. Andy righted the ship. All of them are working in the right way, in the right direction. And I agree with Bobby. I think, they are the team to beat, definitely in the AFC, maybe in the whole league.
Foxy, is there any explaining that then? Maybe it's just having 5 new linemen, at the beginning of the year. Maybe it's complacency, just feeling like we've accomplished a lot and we can kind of roll it out there and be at the top of our game. Is there any explaining why a team would have that sort of a team that doesn't have a huge history of that either, right? Would have a rash of those unforced mistakes.
I go back just to Pat Mahomes, and this is not a ding on him by any stretch. The guy's a great player, and he assumed some greatness early. So back to that prosperity thing I was talking about, that affects everybody. I don't care how good a guy you are. I don't care what kind of a great teammate you are. It's human nature. It's gonna creep in, all right? And it's happened to the best of them, all right? And you got to reel it back, and there's a realization part of it. You could see that with Pat Mahomes after throwing a bunch of interceptions. It was not going as smoothly for him as it had been the last couple years. And so you have to step back. You have to reassess. And it just shows me what even a greater player he is to be able to make that adjustments when you have failure. And so, he worked through it. They worked through it. And they worked through it. And that's that trust and loyalty I'm talking about. There was no coaches throwing the players under the bus. There was no players throwing the coaches under the bus. They worked through it like grown men, and now they're reaping the benefits for that.
And Bobby, I think we threw the D Ward dynasty around a lot with them, over the course of the last couple of years. But maybe this shows they really can be that. You know what I mean? That something's getting thrown their way. It wasn't ideal early this year. And maybe this shows that it is built to last there, that they can turn over 5 linemen in the offseason, that they can deal with teams throwing a little something different at them, that they can deal with prosperity, like Foxy said a couple times here. Maybe this shows the real staying power of what Andy Reid's built there.
Well, the thing is about the NFL, there's nothing static about it. Each and every year, it's dynamic. You are changing, you're turning over your team, 5 new linemen. People are going to start researching, looking at what you're doing, putting out there on film. And the thing with the Chiefs, and it happens when you're great and you have the ability, like Pat Mahomes, to cover up a lot of issues. And you can give up, you can have a bad play, give up a 7-yard sack and be looking at a 2nd and 17. But when you have Pat Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, we get out of this. We get out of it more often than not. And so it's not even the fact that it becomes a complacency from where we don't want to be good. It's, hey, we've always been able to get out of this. And then all of a sudden, you don't get out of them quite as much. And teams start really putting the screws to you, and that's going to happen. And so it does, as a young player, for those guys to be able to, and a fairly young team, to look at that and say, listen, we need to get back to making the routine plays, putting together these drives, not putting ourselves in 3rd and 16. And those might be the Sports Center highlight plays when it's 3rd and 16 and Pat Mahomes is off one leg 12 yards deep in the backfield, throwing it across, and it ends up being a touchdown. Like, that's not a good recipe to win. Every head coach, and I guarantee you Andy's sitting there saying the same thing, like, hey, we got away with it, but let's not try to make a living doing this. But it's hard when you've done it that way. It's your buddy who's been super aggressive at the blackjack table. Like, dude, like, let's just dialing it back a little bit, okay? We don't always need to just continually pushing them all in every time. I know we're good, and we know with the numbers, and we can do all this. And I think that you've begun to see that now. And that's why they put together those drives, and they look far more consistent now on offense than they have probably, at the start of the probably first 7 or 8 games.
That's always how they get you, Bobby. No question about it. They always like you have that little bit of. That's always how they get you. Our third topic for this week's gonna be on the other conference in the NFC, and it's really, to me, like, I look at where this has gone, and to some degree, it's predictable. I thought coming into the year that Aaron Rodgers might have had the best situation around him of any quarterback in the NFL. Well-balanced roster, lots of depth there. And we go through the year. Matt LaFleur, I think, has done a nice job managing the drama. And lo and behold, the Packers are sitting there all alone at the top of the NFC. And so where I want to start here, and we'll start with you, with you, Foxy, on this one, is where the Packers are right now. The Bucs just got shut out by the Saints on Sunday Night Football. You had the Cardinals going out and losing to maybe one of the worst teams in the league, in the Lions. Like, is it sort of starting to become clear that the Packers are the favorite in the NFC? Because, the way I look at it, guys, there was like sort of this super class of 5 teams, 6 teams atop the NFC. The Bucs are in there. The Cowboys are in there. The Cardinals are in there. The Rams, I think, at certain points have been in there. I mean, do you think like Week 15 maybe clarified that Aaron Rodgers and the Packers are the team to beat going into January?
Well, I think I'd lean that way right now, Albert. But the one thing I will say about the NFC, it was really unusual at this point in the season, almost only 3 games left, except for a couple games tonight, is, there's only 2 teams eliminated, all right, in the whole NFC. And there was just one before yesterday's game with Denver. So that's incredible. All right, you still have 14 teams that are mathematically still in it with, really 3 games left, minus a couple games tonight. But that's remarkable. So I think just that alone tells you how even the NFC is. It's kind of crazy to me. I would say that Green Bay by far has been the most consistent. I mean, and the most steady. And I think that's what you kind of look for, is there's not that up and down, one week they're great, and the next week they're terrible. They're steady. You got Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. I think, he's got a really solid receiving core. Everybody talks about one guy, but they have 4 or 5 guys that are legit, that can make plays, get open, or big targets. And what better guy throwing to them? I think probably the most talented quarterback in the league right now. Especially in the NFC. So, to have that, and they're steady, they can run the ball. They've got a really good running back, both as a runner and as a pass catcher. I like their defense. They're steady. They're not, they don't have a lot of flash, but they just play really good team defense. And they make plays when they need to. They play good in critical spots, and particularly the red area, which is, those are 4-point swings, when you win there. So those are big. But they can just do it. They can do it with defense. They can do it with offense. They can do it with their kicking game is probably their weakest area. They showed that a couple of weeks ago. But all in all, I think a really solid football team that I think's been well coached. I think Matt LaFleur does not get enough credit for that, because they've had their share of drama, and he's had to hold that together. And that's not ever easy for a head coach. And he's done an outstanding job.
Yeah, and Bobby, I want to get to that with you, because I think like Matt has done a great job, and it's not just managing it's not just managing Aaron alone. It's managing Aaron and his bosses. I think, he's managing to the locker room. He's also managing up into the front office, and being able to kind of handle the back and forth between the 2 sides and maintain relationships on both sides. Right. Like, to me, like, that's one of the most amazing things that Matt's done. Is you had Brian Gutekunst and Mark Murphy and Aaron Rodgers all at odds. And here's Matt LaFleur in the middle of all of it. And he's able to maintain a relationship where the quarterback still trusts him. and trusted him throughout. And I think anytime you talk to Aaron or you talk to Matt through that, like there was no issue between the two of them ever. I think that helped set this up, and where I'm going with this, Bobby, is I see a happy Aaron Rodgers out there. It's a guy who looks like he's having fun playing football. Looks like he doesn't hate Green Bay, and I would have to think that that's a factor going into the playoffs, because it does look like right now the Packers are getting a very locked in version of Aaron Rodgers.
Well, a couple things on Aaron. First of all, when you start talking about the coaching relationship with your quarterback, and even anyone on the roster, as Foxy will attest to this, you kind of play in both worlds. You're meeting with the GM, you're meeting with the president, you're also meeting with your players. And so they understand the operations and how things need to work from roster construction, roster management, but they also need to feel like they've got your back. And they're not saying one thing to your face and walking in there and saying something else. And I think LaFleur has had a great relationship with Aaron because he's been honest with him. He earned his trust early. And as well, like we've talked about kind of this whole show here, is the fact that Matt LaFleur is a smart coach. Aaron Rodgers is a really smart football player. And I think some of the issues in the past, there may have been a respect issue where Aaron felt like he was unduly taking more of the burden to try to push this offense forward. And now you sit there and look at that with what Matt LaFleur is able to provide. Aaron thinks this guy adds value to my game. He's putting us in positions to be able to have success. And they were able to navigate you get the stuff that's kind of hitting Tampa right now, the injury stuff. They're losing guys. Green Bay's kind of already dealt with that. They already had some of their guys out, whether it was Aaron with COVID, some of their receivers were out earlier in the season, and they were able to manage that and come through that on the other side. They're healthy. They're playing good football. And lastly, about Aaron Rodgers, I would argue, and it's for the greatest compliment you can probably give anybody. It's a little bit, Tom Brady, Michael Jordan-esque. He enjoys the fact that he's sitting there in the eye of a hurricane. I think he honestly plays better when he welcomes and brings all this stuff in. And you look at the stuff in the offseason and the COVID vaccination, immunized whole debate. The more he feels like people are turning against him, he is a piece of coal squeezing diamonds. When you all lean in onto him, that is when he plays his best. It's unbelievable. Psychologically, the revenge game in his mind. He played great last year when the organization's leaning on him. Then this year, all this stuff happens. I mean, a lot of people, you say it's a massive distraction, they're going to struggle. He has played the best football you could argue of his career. He's almost 40 years old, and it's when everything in the world seems placed against him to succeed.
Hey, Bobby, how about, a few weeks ago, he goes into Soldier Field, and he's down in the corner of the end zone. I own you, right? well, he's got to play them 2 weeks later, and they hit him on it. Do you regret that? No, I don't regret that. Just look at the record. I mean, it was almost like most guys would backpedal. He was he welcomed it.
Well,
go ahead.
Not only that, Foxy. Well, backpedal. They're down at halftime. The chickens finally came home to roost. And I sat there and looked at this. I'm like, this might be Aaron's greatest moment to go lay 28 on him or something in the second half. And lo and behold, they have no answers.
That's what he did.
I mean, I think the saying is some guys just want to see the world burn, right? Aaron loves seeing the world burn around him. That dude, just embraces chaos. And you could have everybody else panicking and running. He's just sitting there, boom, boom, boom. It's unbelievable. So, Foxy, the last thing I want to hit on this, and I think this is sort of an interesting dynamic. Bobby touched on the injuries, right? And so, I think one of the most interesting pieces of the Packers season, they've done a lot of this without their two best defensive players, and Zadarius Smith and Jair Alexander. They're probably getting those guys back. They're probably also going to be getting their left tackle, David Bakhtiari, back. So just from a team standpoint, what sort of boost do you think that could give them? They're a really good team to begin with. Best team in the conference. You could argue the best team in the league. Just the idea psychologically for the coaches, for the players, that you're not just getting good players back, you're getting top of the roster, one of the best corners in the league, one of the best pass rushers in the league, maybe the best left tackle in the league. You're getting that level of player back. Psychologically, what do you think that's going to do for the group?
Well, I think it just boosts your confidence. I think going back to the earlier part, Albert, is, what a tremendous job those assistant coaches did. Whether you're talking about the secondary coach, and bringing, next man up guys in and playing good. I mean, they had a corner pick, have 2 pick sixes, and this guy was cut by another squad in the National Football League. So, my hat's off to those defensive coaches. Same thing with the offensive line, arguably the hardest position to coach in football. To piece together the left tackle, especially with a guy, a golden arm guy like Aaron Rodgers. You know what I mean? He's looking over his shoulder too, to make sure that gets done. So, I think, the fact that those coaches and brought those guys along, now they have depth. You're always going to need depth. And sometimes it's not even the best frontline team that goes into the playoffs. It's the team with the most depth, because stuff's going to happen along the way, and you need experienced players to weather those playoff games, not just regular games. These are different games. It steps up a notch, and those are playoff games, and you're playing against good opponents every week.
And Bobby, I would have to think for the players too. Like, that's just, again, the idea you're getting a Jair back, the idea you're getting a Bakhtiari back, the idea you're getting a Za'Darius back. Like, that's got to give the players a huge amount of confidence going into the stretch run and then the playoffs.
Oh, anytime you're bringing dudes back into the locker room and getting them out there, I mean, it's the emotional lift of watching a guy go out there and play. And you're like, yeah, I forgot how good he was. And you see him kind of slowly working along the side. It's like, as soon as we can get these guys back, we're going to be in really good shape. And so that gives you a boost emotionally, your confidence level. And think about this too. And, not to diminish defensively, getting guys back and what that can do for your secondary, your pass rush, and, marry that together. But really the two issues that Green Bay has had, or the issue the last 2 years rather that they've had, and they've got deep in the playoffs, is dealing with teams with elite pass rushes. Tampa Bay, and then you look at San Francisco. They didn't have answers for that. They were beat up. Aaron is under siege. If you give Aaron Rodgers enough time, it's over. Like, the guy will carve you up like a Thanksgiving turkey. And so getting David Bakhtiari back, it's not getting a skill guy back. It's not the flashy production, but it allows Aaron Rodgers, when you play those teams, if you have to play the Rams, if you have to play, the Bucks, teams that have really good, if the Niners have to make a run, you got, Nick Bosa running around, being able to help contain those guys and give Aaron the protection he needs. That, I think, is what will ultimately get them over the hump this year, because it's something that they've struggled with late in the season.
All right, you heard it here first. Packers Chiefs Super Bowl. This is the first time that anybody's ever heard someone predict the Packers and Chiefs are going to be meeting in LA in the middle of February. On your right, that's ex-NFL head coach for the Bears, for the Panthers, and for the Broncos, John Fox. And on your left, that's former first-round pick and Dallas Cowboy, New England Patriot, Detroit Lion. I'm probably going to miss a couple. And you can also catch him on Outkick and on 97.1 The Fan in Columbus, Bobby Carpenter. Appreciate you guys coming out.